twin sister and me. A sorcerer said one must marry high, the other low, to live. Past life, I let her marry the Marquis's heir. He favored a concubine. Let her be abused to death, she took 2 lives with her. My farmer husband died soon after. Sorting his things, I found he was the Marquis's long-lost eldest son. He'd loved her. I kowtowed 100,000 times at their graves. Reborn. Eyes open. I snatched the Marquis's betrothal token from her hand. Sis. You always let me have things. Let me have this marriage too. Welcome to my channel. If you like this story, please click to subscribe. There are more wonderful stories waiting for you to listen to. Chapter 1. A smile lingered on my lips as I fixed my gaze on my sister. The horrifying scene of her death in my previous life was still vivid in my mind, and tears welled up in my eyes. My sister sighed and gently wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes with a handkerchief. All right. I'll do as you wish. Sure. Your sister has always protected you and let you have everything since you were little. She is weak and cannot endure hardship. Can't you? My mother choked up and stopped talking. My sister smiled faintly, not seeming to mind. Mother, don't say anything. One of us sisters has to have a good life. Sure has been smart since she was little. I think she is more suitable than me to be the mistress of the Marquis's mansion. I took a deep breath and suppressed the hatred in my heart. Yes. That's what I thought in my previous life. So I didn't hesitate to marry a farmer and let my sister become the noble wife of a marquis. I never expected that I would be the one to send her into the den of wolves. In this new life, I only hope that my sister can live in peace with the man she loves and grow old together. As for the cannibalistic Marquis's mansion and the overwhelming hatred, I would leave it all to me. I would take justice into my own hands for my sister who died in my previous life. The marriage was thus decided. I would marry into the Marquis's mansion, and my sister would marry a farmer. The families exchanged marriage contracts and set the date for the wedding. My sister would marry first, followed by me. That night, I carried a heavy box and knocked on my sister's door. This is all the money I've saved over the years, along with some gold and silver jewelry. It's all yours. Afraid she would refuse, I quickly added, I'm marrying into the Marquis's family. I'll have everything I want, but you won't have any money. My sister still had that same smile on her face. She gently stroked my hair and said, Sure. Don't worry about me. Father said that Hypocritical also studied for a few days, but due to family circumstances, he is now alone. Once I marry him, I will be the head of the household. Sister, I know you're not greedy for wealth and status. The Marquis's family is powerful and influential, and there must be a lot of intrigue. You're worried that I won't be able to handle it, aren't you? We're twins. You can't hide anything from me. Sure. I'll live a good life with Hypocritical. Promise me you'll take good care of yourself. Okay? Such a good sister. Such a kind sister. Was tortured to death by the Marquis's family. I choked back tears several times before finally throwing myself into my sister's arms, crying until I lost consciousness. On the day my sister was married, I saw Hypocritical again, who had come for the marriage. Unlike when he married me in my previous life, he was now beaming with genuine joy. It was clear that he truly loved my sister. Hypocritical knelt before my father and mother and solemnly promised, if I ever wrong you in this life, I will make sure I have no place to be buried. My sister nervously clutched the embroidered handkerchief in her hands, while my father and mother nodded in satisfaction. I felt a moment of confusion, a fleeting pang of pain that quickly faded. Hypocritical was truly a good man, even though he didn't like me in my previous life. He still gave me the utmost respect as his wife. Even before he died, he did his best to arrange the next few decades of my life. With Hypocritical by my sister's side in this life, I felt at ease. I stared at the flower-decorated palanquin as it gradually disappeared, my gaze gathering in the direction of the Marquis of Dingyuan's residence. 7 days later, I would be dressed in red and married to Lu Wenzhao, the heir to the Marquis of Dingyuan. It was my wedding night. Lu Wenzhao's beloved concubine, Aunt Qiu, couldn't wait to give me a taste of her power. After we had paid our respects to heaven and earth, before my veil had even been lifted, her maid came over to ask for someone. Young master, the concubine is in severe pain. Please go and see her. I sneered inwardly. Indeed, such underhanded tactics were typical of her. Lu Wenzhao ignored the wedding maid's attempts to stop him and stood up to leave. Young master, please stay. I hurriedly spoke up to stop him. Then, after a moment's thought, decided to take off the veil myself. Under the stunned gazes of everyone present, I waved my hand and told them all to step back. He stared at me in surprise, his expression displeased. Shinro has always been in poor health. I must go check on her. Xiao Jinshu, as the legitimate wife, should have the grace to tolerate others. Do not act out of jealousy. I smiled and shook my head, looking him in the eye. The prince has misunderstood. I know that you only have eyes for Aunt Qiu. I made up my mind long before I married into the Marquis family. In the future, I will only focus on being a good wife to you and will never compete with her for your affection. I opened the dowry chest and took out a prescription, handing it to him. I heard that the concubine has a heart condition. The physician of the Shao mansion specializes in this ailment. So before my marriage, I specially asked the physician to write this prescription. If the prince trusts me, you can have the concubine follow the prescription for treatment. The symptoms of heart pain and palpitations will improve significantly. Lu Wenzhao took the prescription from my hand and glanced at it. Looking slightly suspicious, you're actually being so kind? I hid the hatred in my heart and pretended to laugh awkwardly. Matters of love cannot be forced. The prince is a man of honor and loyalty, a rare true romantic in this world. Sure admires you. As soon as I finished speaking, a hint of joy and admiration flashed in his eyes. It's best that you think this way. If you stay within your bounds, I will also do my best to treat you well in the future. Thank you, Prince. I have one more request. After you accompany Aunt Qiu, would you mind spending the night in the main courtyard? Rest assured, I have no other intentions. It's just that tonight is our wedding night, and there are so many eyes watching us in the mansion. I lowered my eyes, hesitating to speak, and let a hint of just the right amount of grievance show on my face. He immediately understood. Since I have promised you the dignity of a legitimate wife, I will naturally keep my word. Rest assured, no matter how late it is, I will return. After Lu Wenzhao left, I immediately suppressed my smile and instructed the maidservant to remove my hairpins and rings, then wash and change my clothes. Just after midnight, he returned to the main courtyard. I led him to the soft mattress that had been laid out. Please make do here for now, Prince. After tonight, you can rest in Aunt Qiu's courtyard. I will handle things with your in-laws. Lu Wenzhao gave me a meaningful look. I understood his disbelief but pretended not to notice, turning away to rest on the bed. As I touched the bed beneath me, it felt as though I could sense the sorrow and despair my sister had once felt lying there. In my previous life, Lu Wenzhao had also been summoned away by Aunt Qiu on his wedding night, leaving my sister alone in the empty chamber. The next day, my sister was punished by the old lady of the Marquis family for not being able to persuade her husband, and was forced to kneel in the ancestral hall for a day and a night. The servants in the mansion were skilled at reading the wind and knew that their master did not take my sister seriously. So they listened to Aunt Qiu and made things difficult for her at every turn. In this life, the tables had turned, and it was Aunt Qiu who was left alone in the empty room. I was very curious to see how she would continue this charade. The next morning, I rose early. The The maids bustled about in an orderly fashion, dressing me in my garments and arranging my hair into a woman's bun. After applying my makeup, I stood up and met Lu Wenjiao's gaze. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. I seemed to notice, blushed slightly, and looked down and smiled shyly. Husband, let's go and offer tea to our parents-in-law. The current Marquis of Dingyuan's wife, Mrs. Chen, was Lu Wenjiao's biological mother, who had been promoted from a concubine to a wife. Rumor had it that the first wife had met with an accident while visiting her parents with her son, and both mother and son had died. But with my past life's experience, I knew that they had been deliberately murdered by the current Marquis. He was the eldest son of the Marquis of Dingyuan who had died. After falling off a cliff, he lost his memory, and by the time he remembered his true identity, he was on his deathbed. Lu Wenjiao and I knelt respectfully on the ground and served tea to the Marquis and the Marquis's wife. Chen Shi, surprisingly, showed a rare expression of goodwill and even removed the bracelet from her wrist to put it on my wrist herself. Lu Wenjiao raised his eyebrows in disbelief, but I knew full well that Chen Shi had long been dissatisfied with Shadowy. She had gone to great lengths to secure her position as the Marquis's wife. How could she allow her son to spend his days mingling with a concubine? Marrying a daughter-in-law from a prominent family who could keep Lu Wenjiao in line and help him secure his position as the heir was the most important thing. I took out the gifts I had prepared in advance and presented them one by one. The main hall was filled with laughter and joy, the atmosphere harmonious and warm. After breakfast, Lu Wenjiao went to the study to handle official business, while Chen Shi kept me in the hall to talk. Just then, a servant reported that Shadowy was requesting an audience. She was dressed in plain clothes, her hair simply tied into a loose bun, adorned with a white jade hairpin. Her slender, delicate frame moved gracefully, like a willow in the wind. When she looked up, her skin was fair, her eyebrows like dark green willows, and her eyes held a hint of autumn water. She was indeed a captivating woman. Chen Shi looked displeased and did not call her up, only instructing her to kowtow to me, the legitimate wife. Qiu Ai's eyes filled with tears as she bowed deeply toward me. This servant greets the lady. Last night, I suddenly fell ill, and the servants, out of ignorance, dared to summon the young master, thereby disrupting the young master's wedding night with the lady. Please do not hold this against me. My brows furrowed, and sure enough, Chen Shi's expression had darkened. I quickly lowered my head, hiding the mockery in my eyes. Auntie is joking. Although the young master arrived late last night, he did not delay the important matters. Qiu's body stiffened, and she screamed in shock. Impossible. The young master clearly said he would not touch you. This fool. I smiled shyly, a blush spreading across my face. Auntie, don't joke around. I am the crown prince's legitimate wife. Why wouldn't he touch me? The crown prince is gentle and considerate. He woke up early to draw my eyebrows and told me to give birth to a son for him as soon as possible to carry on the Marquis's bloodline. Chen Shi snorted coldly. Qiu Xinro, I think you've gone mad. Do you really want my son to spend his entire life with just one woman? You're nothing but a lowly concubine. Don't dare harbor any wrongful intentions. Qiu's concubine tearfully left, sobbing. Chen took this as an opportunity to scold me thoroughly. I remained submissive, lowering my head and nodding in agreement. Chen acted every inch the matriarch before finally letting me go. Little did I know that as soon as I returned to the main courtyard, Lu Wenjiao stormed in, furious. Xiao Jinshu, how could you break your promise to me last night? What nonsense did you tell Xinro today? When did I ever touch you? As soon as Lu Wenjiao entered the room, he kicked over the low stool by the door and slapped me hard across the face. How could your heart be so wicked? I must have been mad to believe your lies and give you the chance to bully Sinew. I covered my face, took a deep breath, and when I looked up again, my eyes were red and filled with tears. Prince, I, Xiao Jinshu, am not that kind of person. Why won't you even listen to my explanation before condemning me? Just because I'm not the person you cherish most. Does that give you the right to slander me and drag me through the mud? Tears streamed down my face. I stubbornly lifted my head, revealing the swollen side of my face and a sliver of my delicate, pale neck. This sight fell upon Lu Wenjiao's eyes, and his gaze paused for a moment, his expression softening slightly. Then speak. I will listen to your reasons. I wiped away the tears at the corners of my eyes with a handkerchief. My voice choked with emotion. Prince, you only know that I lied to Aunt Xiao, but you do not know why I had to say such things. The promise I made to the crown prince. You and I both know, but it must never be revealed to my mother-in-law. If she finds out, not only will I be unable to move freely within the mansion, but even the crown prince and Aunt Xiao will not escape punishment. But Aunt Xiao deliberately exposed the fact that we have not consummated our marriage in front of my mother-in-law. Perhaps her intention was merely to humiliate me. But have you considered the consequences of her actions? What else could I have said? Was I supposed to admit in front of my mother-in-law that I am still a virgin? As I spoke, my voice grew hoarse, and tears once again fell. Tears fell one by one onto Lu Wenjiao's palm, burning hot. His fingers involuntarily shrank back. I bit my lip tightly and fell silent. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Wenjiao sighed and took my hand. I'm sorry. I wronged you. This matter is indeed my fault for causing you such distress. My tears flowed even more heavily. Prince, I am just an ordinary woman. I too long to live a life of love and harmony with my husband. Alas, neither of us can control our own destinies. The prince cares deeply for Aunt Xiao, and I don't want you to become a heartless and unfaithful person. I am willing to give you what you want, but you should also show me basic respect and not treat me with such suspicion. Don't worry. I promise this is the last time. It won't happen again. Lu Wenjiao handed me his silk handkerchief. I hesitated for a moment before taking it and turning away to wipe my tears. I felt his burning gaze on my back and gently curled the corners of my lips. Trust is not built in a day, but it can often be destroyed in an instant. Once there is a crack, it is like a 1,000-mile dike collapsing because of an ant hole. This act was not in vain. On the day of my return to my parents' home, Aunt Xiao wanted to try the same trick again. When the maid came to report to the main hall, Lu Wenjiao paused for a moment before dismissing her. Have the court physician go take a look first. Tell your mistress that I'll visit her after accompanying the lady back to her parents' home. I gave him a grateful glance at the right moment, and a smug smile flashed across Lu Wenjiao's lips. Soon, Aunt Xiao was shocked to discover that her most effective tactic was no longer working. Lu Wenjiao still treated her well, but he no longer listened to her every word like he used to. She had worked her way up from a tea girl at a tea stall to become the beloved concubine of the Marquis. One can only imagine how much scheming and manipulation it took to get there. She would never allow anyone to threaten her position. One day, I was in my room playing chess with Lu Wenjiao when a servant suddenly rushed in and reported, "Young master, Qiu Ai has been poisoned." With a crash, Lu Wenjiao overturned the chessboard and rushed out. I followed closely behind him to Qiu Ai's courtyard. He was holding Aunt Xiao in his arms and scolding the court physician and maids harshly. He really seemed to care deeply. Crown Prince. Poison was put in Aunt Xiao's medicine. Fortunately, she didn't take much. Otherwise even a divine being wouldn't have been able to save her. Qiu Ai, as delicate as a flower, clung to Lu Wenjiao's arm and burst into tears upon hearing this. Prince, the lady is so cruel. The prince merely favored me a little, yet she dares to take my life. I sneered and stood there in silence. Lu Wenjiao reflexively denied it. Xingro. The lady wouldn't do such a thing. There must be a misunderstanding. Qiu Ai was taken aback that he would speak on my behalf. She froze for a moment, her expression nearly collapsing. You don't believe me, Prince? The lady specifically ordered someone to bring me the medicine today, saying it was miraculous for treating heart disease. I drank just 2 sips and the poison took effect. She cried breathlessly. I have been with you for many years. And the lady must be jealous of how much you love me. So she can't stand me. Such a clumsy trick made me laugh. She was so intent on making me look like a jealous woman that she didn't notice Lu Wenjiao's expression growing darker and darker. He had asked my maid to deliver that bowl of medicine. I didn't mind letting the fire burn even more fiercely. So I said angrily, Aunt Cho, do you think I'm stupid? If I wanted to poison you, would I be so stupid as to put poison in the medicine I sent you myself? Besides, when did I ever send someone to give you medicine? All your food and medicine are handled by your own servants. I have never interfered. Madam, denying it won't help. It was your own maid who delivered the medicine. Qiu Ai spoke harshly, eager to convict me immediately. But when her gaze shifted back to Lu Wenjiao, she froze in place. Lu Wenjiao was looking at her with an expression of extreme disappointment and sadness, remaining silent for a long time. The prince? Lu Wenjiao spoke slowly. Shinro, the medicine you drank today was sent by me. Qiu Ai's eyes widened suddenly, her mind going blank. On the day of the wedding, the lady gave me a prescription for treating heart disease. The medicine today was prepared according to that prescription. Aunt Cho seemed to have regained her ability to speak. There must be something wrong with the prescription. Prince, how could she be so kind? Lu Wenjiao smiled sarcastically, the disappointment in his eyes even more evident. At first, I thought the same as you. So I made a special trip to have someone check it. And this prescription is indeed effective in treating heart disease. I had the medicine brewed and sent to you in the lady's name, hoping to ease the tension between the two of you. Shinro, tell me, why was there poison in the medicine I had sent? You wouldn't dare say it was me who wanted to poison you, would you? Qiu Ai's face turned deathly pale. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Lu Wenjiao's eyes darkened, a hint of self-mockery flickering in his gaze as he slowly released Qiu Ai's hand. Shinro, you've changed. You used to be such a kind and strong woman. For now, stay in your courtyard and think things through. Come find me when you've made up your mind. I looked coldly at the two people in front of me, a hint of satisfaction flashing through my mind. In my previous life, my sister wrote this prescription and returned to the Shao residence in order to get closer to Aunt Qiu. However, Aunt Qiu used the same tactic to slander her for trying to poison her concubine. Lu Wenjiao was so angry that he had my sister beaten with 20 strokes and locked her in the courtyard. My sister was already frail, and after this incident, she became bedridden and suffered greatly. In this life, starting with a prescription on my wedding night, I had already laid out this plan. The news of Aunt Qiu's confinement quickly spread throughout the Marquis's residence. The servants were terrified and became increasingly attentive to the main courtyard. When Chen learned of this, she was furious and punished Aunt Qiu by making her kneel in the ancestral hall for half a month. She also called me to her and lectured me for half a day, telling me to hurry up and give Lu Wenjiao a son or daughter. I took the opportunity to suggest that the two maids who served in the main courtyard be assigned to Lu Wenjiao as concubines. Amber was pure and innocent, while Lu Li was delicate and fragile. Having served in the mansion for years, they knew exactly what kind of woman Lu Wenjiao preferred. At first, he was furious, blaming me for acting on my own initiative, but soon he was completely ensnared by their tenderness. By the time Qiu Ai was released from house arrest and allowed to leave the courtyard, Amber was already pregnant. Qiu concubine smashed her own courtyard to pieces, but eventually realized that times had changed. She humbled herself once more to curry favor with Lu Wenjiao, even going so far as to kneel before me in the main courtyard to apologize. Lu Wenjiao, After all, still had feelings for her, and soon returned to Chiu Concubine's courtyard. For a time, Chiu Concubine was the talk of the mansion. Soon after, a servant reported that she was pregnant again. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but be startled. After all, in my previous life, Chiu Ai had never been pregnant. I had thought I sent someone to investigate thoroughly, and the news I received made me clap my hands in delight. I'll see just what Chiu Ai is carrying in her womb and what kind of child she'll give birth to in the end. With 2 concubines pregnant at the same time in the inner courtyard, Lu Wenzhao was overjoyed. Even Lady Chen, the wife of the Marquis, was highly satisfied with me, bestowing numerous gifts and instructing me to take good care of the 2 unborn children. When Amber was 6 months pregnant, the court physician took her pulse and determined that she was carrying a son. Lu Wenzhao was overjoyed, spending 5 or 6 days out of 10 in her courtyard. This news was a blow to Aunt Chiu. She had no choice but to move up her plans. Under the calm exterior of the Marquis's mansion, there were dark currents swirling. Half a month later, it was the birthday of the Marquis of Dingyuan's wife, Mrs. Chen. She had always been very high profile, and she always held a grand celebration on such occasions. I followed her wishes and invited all the powerful and influential people in the capital to a lavish birthday banquet. At the banquet, Chiu Ai, who was pregnant, and Huipo both received gifts from Chinshi. Chiu Ai walked over to Huipo with a wine cup in hand. Sister, I'll toast you. You're about to give birth to the eldest son of the prince. Your status will be unparalleled in the future. Amber, who had been pampered to the point of arrogance, smirked proudly upon hearing this, took the cup, and drank it in one gulp. I watched them exchange words indifferently, then smiled coldly. Soon, Amber coughed up a mouthful of black blood and collapsed to the ground. Poisoning again, the same scenario as before. But this time, Amber wasn't so lucky. The child in her womb was already 8 months old and fully formed. Fearing that the poison might harm the child, Lu Wenzhao ultimately decided to force her to take an abortion potion. Amber's screams echoed throughout the courtyard, starting with heart-wrenching cries and ending in her final, faint gasps. After a full day and night, she gave birth to a stillborn child and died from the poison. I stood in the courtyard, listening to Lu Wenzhao's agonized groans behind me, and smiled. In the previous life, after my sister was abandoned by Lu Wenzhao, Amber and Lu Li rushed to take her place. Liu was still somewhat obedient, content to live her life of luxury. But Amber, during my sister's difficult childbirth, deliberately chose the most hurtful words to torment her. No matter how my sister begged, Amber remained unmoved. The baby was stuck at the birth canal, and her sister was desperate. In her desperation, she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut open her own lower body. Amber never expected her sister to be so resilient. Even though she was exhausted, she still clung to life, determined to give birth to the child. Amber suddenly lost control and suffocated her sister to death with a pillow. Her sister died, taking the baby with her, never seeing the midwife, the doctor, or her husband. What was most despicable was that Lu Wenzhao and Qiu Xinruo, who had bet on whether the baby was a boy or a girl, had her sister's abdomen cut open after her death to confirm the gender. Karma came full circle. Every single one of these acts was their just punishment. Amber died, and the Marquis lost his eldest grandson. The maid who served her insisted that Amber was poisoned by the fruit wine that Aunt Chiu gave her. The ridiculous thing was that Aunt Chiu brazenly used my words to refute me. If I wanted to poison her, why would I do it in front of everyone and hand her the poisoned wine myself? But clearly, the two situations were completely different. The maidservant banged her head on the ground twice. The young master is wise. Our mistress has been extremely cautious since she became pregnant, especially after the previous incident with Chiu's mistress. She would never eat anything without me testing it first. On the day of the banquet, I personally tested everything my mistress ate, except for that cup of fruit wine. But even at this point, Aunt Chiu refused to admit it. She was certain that she was carrying a child and that Lu Wenjiao wouldn't harm her. Aunt Chiu also believed that, after so much time had passed, the utensils used at the banquet had already been washed and put away. But how could I let her get away with it? Prince, the poison was likely in the wine, the court physician can confirm it. After Amber was poisoned that day, I ordered everyone to collect all the bowls, chopsticks, and cups she had used and seal them away. As soon as I finished speaking, Aunt Chiu's legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground. She glared at me with hatred, her eyes bulging. Soon, the court physician detected a deadly poison at the bottom of the cup containing the fruit wine. Lu Wenjiao slowly rose from his seat. His face was pale, his lips trembling, and his hands shaking. After an unknown amount of time, he lowered his head and looked at Xiao with a gaze filled with despair. Shinro, I have treated you well. Why are you doing this to me? That was my first child. Xiao trembled all over, as if she had fallen into an ice cave, feeling cold from head to toe. She smiled bitterly, tears streaming down her face. Prince, it's because Shinro loves you. A woman who truly loves a man could never watch him be intimate with another woman and have children with her. Chiu Shinro came from a lowly background. If it weren't for her mutual love with Lu Wenjiao, how would she have had the opportunity to experience the wealth and luxury of the Marquis' mansion? Therefore, regardless of her past life or present life, what she valued most was Lu Wenjiao's sincerity and her position by his side. She knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. But Lu Wenjiao was no longer moved. He turned away, closed his eyes, and coldly ordered, "Take Chiu Xinyu back to her own courtyard. From today onward, seal the courtyard gates and do not allow anyone to enter or exit. Once the child is born, send it to the main courtyard to be raised by the mistress." Chiu Xinyu seemed to have gone mad, standing there dumbfounded as the servants helped her to her feet and led her away. I clenched my fists, struggling to suppress the wild joy trembling at the tip of my heart. After Chiu was taken away, Lu Wenjiao immediately clutched his chest and began coughing violently. I hurried forward to rub his back and soothe him. "Young master, don't get angry. Your health is more important." Chiu must have been momentarily confused. Lu Wenjiao waved his hand, cutting me off. "There's no need to say more. I'll just consider myself a fool for having misjudged her all these years. She used to be so kind and gentle. I thought she was just jealous because I had other women. I never imagined her heart could be so cruel." I bowed my head and sighed, a fleeting hint of sadness flickering in my eyes. You can't judge a book by its cover. The crown prince has been so kind to Aunt Chiu, yet she still isn't satisfied? Lu Wenjiao furrowed his brows, and his gaze toward me unconsciously softened with tenderness and pity. He took my hand and pulled me into his embrace. "Sure, marrying me has caused you so much suffering. A woman as good as you deserves better. It was my fault for not seeing your true worth. Rest assured, I will treat you well from now on. We have a long future ahead of us." I hid the chill in my eyes, buried my face in his chest, and let out a few choked sobs. Lu Wenjiao tightened his arms around me. That night, he stayed in the main courtyard, on the bed. As our lips entwined, I closed my eyes tightly and endured the nausea. Now, if I wanted to gain a foothold in the Marquis' mansion, I needed a child. After nearly a year of marriage, Lu Wenjiao and I finally consummated our marriage. These days, after court, he would come to the main courtyard to play chess and eat with me, and he would spend the night with me. We were a harmonious couple, and we were quite affectionate, just like newlyweds. After all the ups and downs we had been through, Lu Wenzhao completely relied on and trusted me. He sent someone to deliver the housekeeper's keys to the main courtyard and entrusted me with the management of the entire Marquis' residence. Of course, I couldn't let him down. Soon after, the guards I had stationed in the mansion caught a court physician who was attempting to flee with stolen funds. After a brief interrogation, he confessed everything that Shadowy had done. She had poisoned my food to frame me, killed Amber and the child in her womb, and even faked a pregnancy to vie for favor. She even planned to frame me again, so that the child in her womb would conveniently die at my hands. However, she is now confined to her own courtyard and has no opportunity to approach me. As the months passed and the child in her womb grew larger, the court physician had no choice but to flee. Lu Wenzhao staggered a few steps, collapsed into a chair, and, overcome by rage, coughed up a mouthful of blood before fainting. The Marquis' residence was in chaos. The little maid by my side took advantage of the commotion to sneak out of the residence and deliver a message to my sister as I had instructed. When Lu Wenzhao regained consciousness, he stared blankly at the ceiling, as if all the energy had been drained from his body. When the first child died, he could still tell himself that there was still the child in Chio's womb. But now he realized that Chio's pregnancy had been a lie. The 2 children he had longed for were gone. I sat by the bedside and gently helped Lu Wenzhao up. "Husband, are you feeling better? The medicine is ready. Let me feed it to you." He leaned weakly on me. "Where is Chio Xinro?" "She's still locked up in the courtyard. This is too disgraceful. Once it gets out, it will become a laughingstock in the capital." So I took it upon myself to seal off her courtyard and not allow anyone to enter. The court physician is also locked in the woodshed in the backyard, waiting for you to wake up before making a decision. Lu Wenzhao gripped my hand, filled with admiration. "Sure, you did well. Mother said that when marrying a wife, one should marry a virtuous woman. Marrying you is the greatest fortune of my life." I blushed and lowered my head, hiding the mockery in my eyes. "Husband, the court physician knows too much and cannot be spared. As for Chio Xinro, she has been with me for all these years, and I cannot bring myself to kill her. But the debt of killing my son must be repaid. Have her beaten 50 times, then seal off the courtyard and let her fend for herself." Lu Wenzhao's gaze was turbulent yet calm, and when he uttered the final words, a hint of ruthlessness slipped through his lips. Those who appear compassionate on the surface are often the most ruthless and heartless. I glanced indifferently at his cold expression, raising the corner of my eyebrow slightly. "Very well. I will handle it personally." I sat high on the dais, watching the servants carry out the punishment. 50 lashes would be enough to take the life of even a strong man, let alone a delicate woman like Chio Xinro. At first, she still had enough strength to curse me at the top of her lungs. But by the end, she was gasping for air. Her entire lower body was covered in blood and broken bones, and she lay on the ground like a pile of rotten meat. I looked up at the gloomy sky and let out a long breath. It was almost over. Call a doctor. She is, after all, a concubine of the Marquis. We can't just let her die like this. Besides, I still have use for her life. Life in the Marquis' mansion returned to normal. I suggested to Lu Wenzhao that he take 2 more concubines, but he refused. He just gazed at me affectionately and asked me to give him a legitimate son as soon as possible. Soon after, I received a letter from my sister, informing me that He Chuan had regained his memory, and they had already set off for the capital. I secretly calculated the timing and announced the news of my pregnancy on the chosen day. At that moment, Lu Wenzhao had just returned to the mansion. Upon hearing the servant's report, he rushed straight to the main hall without even changing his clothes. When he heard from the mansion's physician that I was already nearly 2 months pregnant, he slammed the table and burst into laughter. His depression of many days was swept away. He hurried into the inner room, hugged me tightly, and his eyes were full of joy. Sure. You are truly my lucky star. I lowered my eyes and smiled slightly. The joy of becoming a mother for the first time bringing a long-lost warmth to my heart. This was my first child in 2 lifetimes. And it would be my only child. As for the child's father, he didn't matter to me. He would only be my child. When I was 3 months pregnant, I was walking in the garden. Shinro, who was locked in the backyard, took advantage of the chaos to run out and knocked me to the ground. I lay in bed for 2 days before the pregnancy was stable. Lu Wenjiao was furious. With reddened eyes, he stayed by my side, gently wiping the sweat from my forehead. After confirming that both me and the child were unharmed, he immediately ordered Shinro's execution. Sure. As long as I have you, that's enough. Anyone who dares to harm you must die. A part of my heart trembled, and I instinctively turned my head away from his gaze. Realizing something, I shook my head in self-mockery. Lu Wenjiao. This man, beneath his seemingly affectionate exterior, hid extreme selfishness and cold-heartedness. He could love you, but only if you had value and never threatened his interests in any way. That's why in the previous life, he stood by coldly while his sister died, even going so far as to kick her while she was down. Soon, the men he had sent out returned to report. Madame Chiu refuses to die and wants to see the prince one last time. Lu Wenjiao's fingertips twitched slightly, and his first reaction upon hearing this was to look at me. I forced a smile and said, "My lord, go and see her. After all, you were once in love." He raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded at me. "I'll be back soon." Sure. We still have children to raise. Let's live a good life together. I smiled and nodded. Watching Lu Wenjiao's departing figure, a wave of intense sadness and loss washed over me. "Prince! Wait!" Lu Wenjiao turned back, the yellow light of the setting sun shining on him, his features becoming increasingly blurred. He smiled faintly, waved at me, and walked away without looking back. On that day, Lu Wenjiao, the crown prince of the Marquis of Dingyuan, was stabbed in the heart by his concubine Qiu Xinro and died on the spot. Afterwards, Qiu Xinro died of exhaustion. The dagger I had accidentally left behind in her courtyard helped me end the lives of both of them. After Lu Wenjiao's death, the Marquis of Dingyuan, who had always lived a secluded life and never meddled in worldly affairs, personally presided over his funeral. Although the Marquis of Dingyuan did not like Lu Wenjiao and his mother, he was, after all, his last child. He had to endure the heartbreak of burying his own child twice in such a short time. Almost overnight, his hair turned completely white. At Lu Wenjiao's funeral, I cried until I fainted. When I came to, I swore before his spirit tablet that I would never remarry and would raise our child with all my heart. People in the capital all praised me for my loyalty and righteousness, and even the palace issued an edict commending me. However, Lady Chen, the Marquis's wife, could not accept the fact that Lu Wenjiao was dead and became mentally unstable. When she was sober, she would point at me and curse me, saying that I was a bringer of death and that I had killed her son. The Marquis of Dingyuan was worried that she would harm me and my child, so he sent her to a village on the outskirts of the city and arranged for people to guard her day and night. With Lu Wenjiao's posthumous child in my womb, I became the sole pillar of the Marquis' family. I took this opportunity to clean up the Marquis' mansion and replace all the servants with my own people. By the time my sister and Hechuan arrived in the capital, everything had settled down and the Marquis' mansion was under my control. The Marquis of Dingyuan looked at Hechuan, who had suddenly appeared before him, in disbelief. His beloved eldest son was still alive, and the huge surprise of regaining what he had lost brought tears to his eyes. My sister stood gently to one side, holding their newborn child in her arms. The memory of her tragic death in her previous life gradually faded, replaced by her current quiet and beautiful appearance. I smiled from the bottom of my heart. the Marquis of Dingyuan finally learned the truth about the accidental death of his first wife and legitimate son, and regretted his actions. Now that Lu Wenxiao was dead, he could only send Qin to the inner prison and imprison her for life. Soon after, the Marquis of Dingyuan passed his title to Hechuan and requested an imperial decree for my sister. My sister, who died alone and miserably in the courtyard in her previous life, finally found happiness in this life. 5 months later, I gave birth to a daughter and named her Lu Ansai. In this life, my sister and I lived together in the Marquis mansion for decades, never to be separated again. The end.